It is Wednesday, March 25th, here on the CRP, and I'm Miguel Dorati, joined by Devin Miller, and that means MMA talk, and today that means we're talking UFC 239. Major news coming down the pike. The main event's finally set for the July Supercard the UFC traditionally has. The principal fight is set to be the 135-pound title match in the ladies' division between Holly Holm and Amanda Nunes. They've also announced the return of Jon Jones as he faces Thiago Santos, and this has been added to the previously announced fight of Luke Rockhold taking on John Blachowicz. So the July 6th card is starting to come together. Probably will be in Las Vegas. None of that's still officially announced yet, but it's going to be a short little bit away. Devin, what do you think of the fights first? Before I give you the floor here, we should mention that it is a watershed year here for women's sports and women's combat sports in particular. In a few weeks here, we've got Clarissa Shields taking on Christina Hammer in a middleweight super bout of for title unification on the boxing side. That's an unprecedented fight. We've got ex-MMA star Ronda Rousey headlining WrestleMania, which, is a major deal on the wrestling end. And here, I think we can say the same thing, because what the UFC has done is they've turned over their July card to Amanda Nunes and Holly Holm, and I think much deserved.
Yeah, you didn't even mention that the May card in Brazil for UFC 237 is going to be headlined by women. It's going to be a strawweight bout between Rose Namajunas versus Jessica Andrade. So yeah, there's a lot of big things happening for women's combat sports these days. Women's boxing seems to be getting more attention than it's had in a long time, and women's MMA has really been set off over the past several years. And as you mentioned, with Ronda Rousey headlining WrestleMania, and now you've got Amanda Nunes being announced is going to come back against Holly Holm, the current Buster Douglas of MMA right now, coming back to either headline or co-headline one of the biggest arguably the biggest card of the year for International Fight Week in Vegas in July, UFC 239, and it's a big fight, and it was originally scheduled to be the headliner in Brazil. Amanda Nunes' home country. Amanda Nunes obviously coming off the gigantic, enormous win, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, female victory in female MMA history. The other big win that I can think of was actually the Holly Holm win over Ronda Rousey, was also very big. It's interesting those two are fighting each other. But just a spectacular performance where she goes up in weight at the year-end card last December, fights Chris Cyborg, longtime dominant fighter at the 145-pound division, knocks her out in less than a minute, solidifies herself as arguably, I think on most people's list is the greatest female mixed martial arts competitor in history. They've got a very short history, so that's not really saying a whole lot yet. Give that 10, 20 years and see how that legacy holds intact right now. But for the short history, Amanda Nunes is still very high on a lot of people, high if not number one on most people's rankings when it comes to women's MMA.
And the person who used to be there is Holly Holm. She was once probably rated that number one person. And, frankly, with a win here, she could probably get that spot again, because the level that Holm maintains as far as, skill that she brings to the ring is standout every fight. And that's what makes her such a great opponent for just about any of the stars that they've developed there. So kudos to her. She's also entering the big the first fight of a new 6-fight deal that she signed. So we're going to have Holly Holm around for a while. And again, like I said, if she wins this fight and becomes a 2-time UFC champion, on top of all her boxing credentials, you're going to have a pretty strong argument for, a once-in-a-lifetime athlete that we're getting to watch.
Yeah, I've always really liked Holly Holm, and even her losses inside the octagon. She lost that fight to Misha Tate, but she was winning every round. She won every round but the second. Was coasting into the fifth while a dominant win, and just got lazy in that fifth round and got submitted after the Rousey fight. But she was still a baby in MMA at the time. And then she had some tough decision losses after that to Cyborg and Shevchenko and Durandamy. But a lot of people think she won that Durandamy fight. Durandamy was really playing very, very dirty in that fight. And the Cyborg fight, she went up in weight. It was, and Cyborg fought very well that night. She actually got the chance to fight instead of just getting steamrolled like she did against Nunes. And Shevchenko, I think, just surprised a lot of people. So when Holly's on, Holly's a very tough girl to fight. And I think that she's going to be a very tough style fight for Nunes. Nunes isn't going to be able to just tee off on Holly. Holly doesn't really fight that way. Holly's very tactical in her approach. I will say this about this card. We just did this whole video, which I guess we're getting close to April 1st, so I guess we're getting fooled today, but we get news all day about a possible Jon Jones move to heavyweight to fight Stipe Miocic, and then later in the day we find out it's confirmed, 100% set in stone, light heavyweight title defense against Thiago Santos at UFC 239. So joke's on us, I guess, but what I interpret with that is I don't think that was planned just to mess with everybody. I interpret that as Stipe didn't take the fight. And I don't know what your thoughts on that is, Miguel, but it sounds to me like they had that planned. Stipe didn't want the fight, so they just went ahead and made the light heavyweight title fight with him and Santos.
Yeah, but no, I think that's without getting into Miocic's mindset, because I don't think he's turning it down because he's scared of Jon Jones, but I think that he's a guy that, as a decorated former champion, kind of is stuck on his rematch kind of thing, and maybe willing to let opportunities go by or fights go by because he's stuck on that rematch. He wants a title fight next, doesn't want to hear about anything else, And then some of these guys, they're honorable men, right? They say something and then they decide to stick by it. So, in the old days, a couple of weeks ago, a few months ago, Miocic might have said something along the lines of, I want a rematch and that's for the next fight and I won't take anything else. They may have offered him a few $1 million more and he still feels he has to say no. Like I said, I don't think he's running from Jon Jones, but I think he may be getting a little bit of bad advice here on his best path to a title fight. Best path to anything in the UFC has traditionally been just keep Dana happy. If you can be a good soldier and make him happy and you both are on the same path, then, fights will come, your opportunities will come. Miocic at this point may have blocked them from a superior plan just because he's stuck on his rematch with Dan Cormier. So I think it's a little bit of an unfortunate situation for Stipe, basically, because he's going to be the one who continues to sit because, where is he going to fight? Jones, it doesn't make sense what the UFC did. If that falls apart, then, the UFC just moves forward with Jones as quickly as possible, getting him in the ring as often as possible, and start putting fight talk behind his name and not all the stigma that he's been carrying for the last couple of years. We had talked about him fighting 4 times this year. He's well on his way towards that. And this shows me that they weren't going to stop and they weren't going to wait. That's the way to do it for these guys. If you're healthy, you should be looking to stay active and fight, not sit out, wait, eat up 3 months, 6 months of your prime in your career, waiting for something that's in your head that may not be particularly in the company's plans. And then on top of that, obviously the company's plans are always moving. They're always a moving target. So it may look great like Cerrone and Conor a couple of weeks ago. We were all ready for that. And now, that's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So you have to be flexible. You have to be ready. And you can't get stuck on an idea of a rematch or that you're owed something here. Because, unfortunately, Stipe's going to be waiting. And it really looked like that situation had been solved. So I think he's the odd man out. I think he's the guy that's disappointing. And I think, come July 7th, probably Thiago Santos is going to, have taken a loss on his career against Jon Jones and will be moving on about another dominant performance. I don't see that fight being the optimal opponent for Jon Jones next. I think that's more of par for the course. How do you see that?
Well, I think he's going to open up as another big underdog, just like Anthony Smith did. And he does have kind of a wonky, wild style, and he's got a lot of power, and he's not afraid to throw it. So I think that will be an interesting aspect to this fight. But going back to Stipe Miocic, if he doesn't have a valid reason for this, I don't believe he's running scared. I think he wants Cormier. He wants a title fight is what's most likely. But I think that was such a big mistake because, you might not get the opportunity to fight Jon Jones again. And I stand by what I say on our last talk, that I believe beating Jon Jones is bigger than beating Daniel Cormier for the heavyweight title. Beating Jon Jones right now would be earth-shattering. Earth-shaking for your resume. And Stipe has about as good a shot as anybody else does. Top 3 for sure. Chance of beating Jon Jones as anybody else does right now. If he's healthy and he just turned this fight down because he feels like he's being screwed over and he deserves a title fight, well, I believe that was bad advice because I can see them saying, Jon Jones is a huge risk and, you lose that fight, you're not going to get the title fight and you're in your mid-30s already and you deserve that rematch. Well, the thing is, you're turning down this fight is not going to get you that title fight. So what would have most likely got you that title fight was to fight Jon Jones and pull off a gigantic win. Then you're definitely in for a title fight.
Yeah.
He just probably shot himself in the foot.
And the problem here, it becomes, like you said, it's not the money because he's turning down, the fact that it's on July 6th. Here, check out what happened with Amanda if you look at it, because Amanda, again, now she's become a champion that does need a reward. She does need a situation where it's like, all right, your ship is coming, you've beaten all the horses at this point. You know what I mean? So she came out and in her negotiations, she's not a master negotiator either, but she was asking for $3 million for her next fight. But what did the UFC do? Instead of getting ugly and stuff, they shut that talk down. They said, okay, we're going to move you from Brazil to July, to the big card, and you'll get closer to that. Maybe she even will get to that. But that's what they did, is they accommodated her. So by the fact that they're offering him Jon Jones on this weekend, it isn't about the money. So Miocic is stuck on honor, and that's a bad place to be stuck because he's always going to be right. And then, it reminds me of like bitter stories in pro wrestling of Bret Hart, in boxing of Marvin Hagler, guys that are still talking about how they were robbed 20 years ago. And, those are very disappointing, bittersweet stories.
Yeah, I agree. And what's honor, we've been over this here on the CRP about people like Donald Cerrone compared to like the Diaz brothers. This sense of entitlement that I deserve this and they're going to give it. That's just not how the UFC works. The UFC and the fans, it's not just the UFC and the fans, tend to reward those who just keep fighting. And it doesn't even matter if you take the hard losses. Just get out there and fight and keep fighting and stay fighting. You look at Michael Bisping, we just commented about him being in the Hall of Fame. That Donald Cerrone is going to follow suit. We just saw Anthony Pettis pull off a gigantic win in his career on a fight that nobody thought he was going to win at a weight division he had never even fought at after going 3-6 in his last 9 fights. And it's just because he'll take these fights. He'll fight them. And he's going to pull some of them off. He's a world-class fighter. And it might be against a Wonder Boy Thompson, and then your stock all of a sudden is at an all-time high. And Donald Cerrone's having a career resurgence. And Diego Sanchez is having somewhat of a late career resurgence. the UFC and the fans, this isn't boxing. I don't believe that a loss in MMA is anywhere near like what it is in boxing. A loss in boxing can really harm somebody's career. They got to be a lot more careful in boxing, it seems like. In the UFC, these people take losses, and it's a very unpredictable sport. They're wearing small gloves. They can kick. They can punch. There's a lot of different variables in the game. And, you know, it happens. I mean, not everybody's going to be a Jon Jones or some of these people that are just so dominant. And Stipe says, if Stipe's healthy and was offered to fight Jon Jones, the biggest fight he could ever possibly imagine on International Fight Week, he should have taken it. Period. There's no reason not to take that fight.
And we're talking about the big news coming down the pike here. March 25th, the UFC has announced their July UFC 239 card will be headlined by Amanda Nunes versus Holly Holm and Jon Jones taking on Thiago Santos. The Jones fight for the 205-pound title around Jones's waist, as opposed to speculation from earlier in the day that had Jones moving the heavyweight. I'm Miguel Durrani, that's Devin Miller, and we are the CRP.